What's up, chillers and thrillers? Welcome to KnoxOut Horror, the pod all about horror and mystery of all forms. And I'm your host, Jay. Bloody Mary is a supernatural game where it's believed that an evil spirit is conjured upon playing. Some people have played with nothing happening, but others aren't so lucky. Today I'm going to tell one girl's story based on the legend. So without further ado, let's get to it. One Saturday back in junior high, my parents were going to be away until later that Sunday for their anniversary. They said that I can invite my best friends Kelly and Morgan to have a sleepover, so I did. We spent the whole day playing games, eating junk food, and watching TV and movies, normal teenage girl stuff. By the time it started to get dark, we were bored and decided to tell scary stories. Morgan and I told our tales, then came Kelly's turn. She told the story of Bloody Mary. Mary Worth was a woman that lived in a village over 100 years ago who practiced black magic. She was an expert in medicines and herbal remedies. The people in the town would send their children to her whenever they were sick, and they would leave feeling better than ever. Then the children began to disappear, and Mary would be to blame. The town labeled her as a murderer despite not having any evidence to suggest otherwise. Mary pleaded with the people to believe her innocence, but they wouldn't. Eventually, they beat and tortured her as they held a mirror up to her face to show her what filth she was as she screamed in pain. Before her death, she vowed that her spirit would haunt them through their mirrors. Then her body was burned to ash. Soon, the people went on with their lives, but the children's disappearances didn't stop. The real murderer would soon be caught and confess to all the crimes Mary had been blamed for. But it was too late. Mary was already dead. The village people all felt guilty. One of them even searched for another witch to perform a seance to apologize to Mary, but it went wrong. Mary, now calling herself Bloody Mary, had possessed the witch and told the villager that the only way that the village could atone for their actions was to each stand in front of a mirror with one candle lit and call her name 3 times in a row. The village people did it and all suffered various brutalities. The incident and ritual would be passed down for years, and whoever would summon Mary would face dire consequences. Kelly swore this was all true and noted how people had actually disappeared or were found dead after playing the game. I, being the skeptic and wanting to prove that the story was just a hoax, decided that we should play. Morgan was up for it, but Kelly was dead set against it. After a bit of teasing from myself and Morgan, Kelly relented. We went into the bathroom and turned off the light. Then we placed the candle in front of the mirror and lit it. After that, we stood and looked into the mirror, chanting slowly, "Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary, Bloody Mary." A few moments passed with nothing happening, but just as I was getting ready to open my mouth to gloat, we saw her. She had long black hair and dead pale skin. Her eyes were white and her mouth, neck, and hands were all covered in blood. We all ran out of the bathroom screaming and struggled to sleep that night. The next day was uneventful and my friends had went home. That night, however, I went into the bathroom and out of my peripheral vision, I thought I seen Bloody Mary again. But when I looked into the mirror, she was gone. The day after, I was to meet the girls to walk to school. I called Morgan, but when I called Kelly, her mother answered, distraught. She told me that she found Kelly in the bathroom that morning with gashes all over her face and body. She died due to the blood loss, and it was believed to be a suicide. I was devastated and I knew it wasn't a suicide. It had to be Bloody Mary. She killed Kelly, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her mother. I finally met up with Morgan, and after we talked about Kelly, I told her what happened to me the night before. I felt so guilty, and if this game were real, what was going to happen to us? That night, as I got out of the shower, I seen Bloody Mary in the mirror again. This time she stood there for a moment, staring at me. She then suddenly did a banshee scream that was so deafening I dropped to my knees in pain. Not sure how, but in the morning I woke up in my bed. I got up and dressed as usual, and when I went to school I didn't find Morgan. I had started to worry. My worst fears came true when my teacher announced to the class that Morgan's body was found. I begged him to tell me all of what he knew, and he hesitated for a bit. And then he told me that Morgan was found in her bathroom with her eyes ripped out. Right now, no one knows who had done it. I wanted to scream at him that it was Mary, but I didn't want everybody to think that I was crazy. I did some research on Mary that evening and found out that the way to get rid of her was to repeat the steps of the original game, but instead say "Go away, Bloody Mary" 3 times. I rushed into the bathroom and performed the ritual. For a bit I was relieved until Mary's image appeared in the mirror. I don't remember what happened, but when I came to, I heard frantic voices. It was my parents. I tried to run to see them, but it felt like I was trapped in a maze. As I took a moment to assess the situation, I felt a breath on my neck. I turned around to see the same grotesque face that had been haunting me and my friends these past days. I was face to face with Bloody Mary. As I stood paralyzed with fear, I realized that she had pulled me into the mirror with her. Thanks for listening to KnoxOut Horror. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, join my Patreon, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, you can check out all the links in the show notes. That's all for this episode, and I'll see you next time.